You're listening to Tom's Engaging HR podcast, where we're amplifying, humanizing, and engaging leaders who are making work better for employees every day. Thanks for joining us for a fun and engaging conversation. Let's go.
All right, we are back with a special edition of Tom's Engaging HR. I am on location at a fantastic Mexican restaurant with our guest today, so you're going to see why here in just a moment. But really excited to share with you today. You might hear a little bit of chips and salsa in the background. Might hear some cars in the street, but you know what? That's on location recording for you. So, since he's here, I can't wax poetic by myself too long. That's kind of rude. So, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest, Tim Jones. He's the executive director of the nonprofit Longer Tables, who is creating places of connection through large-scale community table events, namely a literal mile-long table in downtown Denver coming in 2025. Yeah. He's addressing employee engagement and retention with large companies. Tim is lead consultant at Vertical Solutions, a full-service consulting agency helping companies thrive through belonging. Tim, welcome to Tom's Engaging HR on Site.
Tom, I don't want to be rude, but I'm finishing my last bite of Pastor Taco, so I'm so excited and grateful to be with you. Thanks.
No, it's awesome you're joining me, and we're really leaning into this longer tables thing, this community and eating together, sharing a table thing. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. And one of the things I'm most excited is that it's not just a direct, straight line HR conversation. You know, we were talking here as we were getting into our lunch that, what is HR? Why is the podcast HR? And it can really go wide. It can go to leadership. It can go to coaching, development, all that kind of stuff goes in. So even though we're called Tom's Engaging HR, we really take in all those pieces. And that's really what we're going to do today is take a little bit broader look, but also look at how Longer Tables is actually directly impacting workforce, people, employee engagement, and helping make work better for people. So we're going to do the whole thing.
I love it.
So you were just back in California recently?
I was.
What were you doing back there?
Drinking wine. And
that's a great activity.
Connecting with people and actually talking a lot about the table. One of the most human things there is on this planet.
Yeah, I love it. We're at a table now.
Yes.
We had lunch before. They're shorter tables. Why longer tables? What's the deal with the longer tables? Is this table not a good table? Are we having a good time? Could it be better if it was longer?
Yeah.
Let's start there.
Good question. Well, let's start with food. Food, what we are doing, or what we just did, Tom, is one of the most bonding, humanizing things we could do. You can meet someone on the street. It's great. But to actually eat together, there's about 42 things that are happening that bonds us and connects us when we eat together. It's actually very intimate. It's a very human, intimate thing to do with someone else. And so HR, this is human. So
yeah.
So much of our world has fragmented us and torn us apart. I don't think I have to explain where we are, where our society is, where our work places can be. And
unfortunately, you don't.
Yeah. And this place called the table is perhaps one of the most powerful places to reconnect us, to re-engage us. We've got to eat 3 times a day. Those are 3 opportunities to not only sustain our bodies, but reconnect or connect with people. So short tables, just us today at the table, it's awesome. It's worth every minute, every bite of it. Longer tables is this idea that everyone belongs at the table. There's a place for everyone, whether it's in the community or at your company. There's a place for all of us. So, yeah, don't get me wrong. 2 people eating together, 3 people, 6 people, or like in a month, we're going to have 528 people eat at the same table.
Wow, 528?
Yes, sir.
It's not a circle table, is it?
No circle or round tables here. Thanks for that opportunity, Tom, to blast the round table. No, this is half tongue-in-cheek of round tables. Usually, thinking about corporate meetings or galas, we've all walked into that room. We see the round tables. Yep. I'm getting a little older. I may or may not have some hearing issues. it is really difficult to hear across a round table. You end up defaulting, talking to the person on your left and right. The longer table represents a few things. It actually makes it pretty easy to talk across a rectangle table.
Yep.
And you can get as many people as you can at a long rectangle table.
Yeah,
Can't do that
circular
with
table has an end.
You can't do that with...
All right, it's coming together a
circle.
little bit here.
You got it. You
it's
got what I'm
coming
putting
together
down.
a bit here. It's one of those, it's not a stretch. It's when I first met you, I heard the idea and I went, wow, that's really cool. It's unique.
Yeah.
It's a great perspective. But then, as you think about it, like the table, the relationships that you have and the meetings, growing up, family dinner, that was such a centerpiece of the American culture.
That's right.
And I feel like even that's starting to be torn apart a little bit, not on purpose, but we make it a point in my house to have at least twice a week.
Yeah.
But when I grew up, it was 7 days a week, and now it's twice a week because my son has soccer or lacrosse, and my daughter has X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Or there's something going on.
Yeah.
But that really is what would bring the family back together. Is that?
That's right.
Did you come up that way, or is that where it started, or did this come from
Absolutely.
a different place? Through your experiences.
No, I first got a taste of this. There's lots of puns in this conversation, but
Perfect.
At my grandma's table, fried chicken, Sunday afternoons, Sunday evenings. I remember the art of lingering at my grandma's table.
Yeah.
2 or 3 hours of telling stories, of sharing what's going on in our lives, of sharing emotion, of really feeling seen. And when someone asks you, what's going on in your life? The table creates that place to do that.
Yeah.
We are living at an obsessive, unsustainable speed of life, and we are now starting to see the breakdown not only of the nuclear family, as you're sharing, with all of the craziness of overcommitment and sports and all of that, but we're starting to see the breakdown in society. And I would attribute that, a lot of that, to the speed of life. Of course, the issue with screens and our heads down. If we're looking at a phone, we're not having a real conversation with someone.
Yep.
And so we're not really connecting with someone. So everything right now, I believe, in our society is against us, and against, most of it is against connection. And then if we're not connecting, we're not establishing trust, we're not creating relationships, we're not creating loyalty. And then, not to be over dramatic here over lunch, but that's when we start to see the deterioration of society.
Yeah. Well, I'm always on my phone. Erica, if you're listening, I don't have it up right now, but
He does not.
She we pull our stats every week, and I'm double where she's at. But in my head, I'm leaning into connection because I've got my group of buddies that I go to concerts with. I got my group of buddies from New York. I got my California friends. I've got my college buddies, and I'm always connecting with them. So to me, the phone meant connection. What I'm now realizing, and I knew it was there, but what I'm now paying attention to is the lack of connection of what's in front of me because of those connections. So it can do both, but as long as you have that up, you're not connecting where your feet are at right now, which is what a table can do for you.
Totally. And the phone is a version of microwaving relationships. Guess what?
Microwaving relationships.
That doesn't work. Trust moves very slowly. Relationship moves meal after meal. Trust is built almost taco by taco, if you will. There's no shortcut to the thing that we all desire, and that's real relationship.
Yep, that connection.
Yeah, real authentic connection. There is, inauthentic connection. I've heard the term, I'm stealing this, artificial intimacy, another version of AI that we're experiencing in our world. It is absolutely false intimacy. So when the going gets tough and when we find ourselves alone, that becomes a very scary place.
So the main idea is getting people together, bringing people to the table, right? So what's the goal of the organization once you start zooming outside? So we've got the table. You want to bring people together, universally accepted. Anyone listening to this probably going, I like this. Keep going.
Right.
So let's keep going. What are you doing with this idea in your organization?
Yeah, we are reclaiming the table as a place to reconnect us. And it may sound very simple. That's part of the power of it, is its simplicity. But the table can go anywhere. It can go into the boardroom, as we will talk about.
Yep.
It can go into the United Nations. It can go into the classroom. It can go into the city park, where you're bringing neighbors together. It can go into the pub. It can go into your neighbor's house. It goes anywhere. So where this is going is to model and show people just the simplicity and the power of the shared meal that is in front of us every day. And then to equip people, to help people understand, oh my gosh, I never thought I had such a vehicle to not only reconnect and connect with people in deep ways and to create relationships, but to connect with my employees, to connect with my neighbors. And the indicators and the data shows us that the more we are connected, the more we thrive, the more we flourish.
Yeah.
And a lot of our issues, including health issues and the polarization, toxic polarization that we are seeing in our culture. So we want to equip people to reclaim the table in their own context, whatever that is.
Well, and going from the HR perspective, I worked at People Element. We did employee engagement surveys.
Yeah.
Engaged employees are more productive.
Yep.
They stay longer. They recruit more people in.
Right.
So that engagement in the work terms really translates, to just people being connected.
Yes.
Whether it's to your work, whether it's to somebody else, whether it's to your dog, but that connection is what we all crave. And when you have that connection, you're on the right track.
Yep.
No matter where you're at, who you are, and what you're doing.
That's right. Well, and you talked about the decline of the nuclear family. We've seen the decline in volunteer organizations across America. We have seen the decline in faith communities, which is my background. So where are we going to do this? Like that's a pretty scary thing. And we started, as we got into this work as HR professionals, C-suite leadership started coming to us and saying, hey, can you do this table inside our company? We're like, oh my gosh, where are the people in our world? Well, they're in companies.
Yeah.
They're employees. So could we take this thing called the table and introduce it back into our work cultures? How powerful could that be? And we are now finding that the table, we do our large community events to bring communities together. This thing is even more powerful in the workplace.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to get to the workplace piece,
Yes.
but I want to talk about the community tables first and then kind of build from there.
Sure.
You just had an event recently?
We did. 2 weeks ago, we
Yeah, tell us
brought
about
about 93 people together from all walks of life, these cross-culture gatherings that are some of the most powerful and beautiful things we are a part of.
Yep.
To create a safe place, we invite these folks from a variety of places through co-hosts who love and know what we are doing. They invite 6 or 7 people from their world, and then we mix everyone up. So we have this racial diversity, this socioeconomic diversity, and we do potluck. We go old school. And
Sweet.
You wouldn't believe the food and the meals that bring these people together. We have 2 rules. No talk about work. And
Love it.
number 2, we want to meet the real person. So no performing, no masks. You're invited just to be where you're at. And when we do those 2 things, along with a handful of other intentionalities, we create a place where people who could not be any more different than one another actually start sharing very authentic and vulnerable things about their dreams, their fears, their lives, their children. And then we all start realizing we are much more alike than we are different.
Yeah. So do you see, if we have an introvert listening and they're going, whoa, there's a big table.
That's right.
I'm sitting with people I don't know.
That's right.
I like myself some potluck, but
Yeah.
this is intimidating.
Yep.
I'm sure there has to be introverts that are going, or people that aren't, like you and I out there talking to every person that's walking down the
All
street.
day long. Right.
Like, what do you say to them? And what are some of the experiences they've told you about after coming to your tables?
Yeah, I'm still trying to understand these folks. Totally joking. Some of my best friends are introverts, and they're usually at the end of our table gatherings. They're the first ones leaving, getting out of the door. But they love it. They love it just as much. They just need it in shorter bursts. But we make it as in that intentionality of like, this isn't a place of performance. Like, we want to experience the real you, whether that's in the community or at work. Like, just take a breath. If you want to sit at the table and do more listening and reflecting, that is absolutely welcome. So I think some of those safety measures that we take and intentionalities to really welcome people right where they are helps introverts experience something that can be pretty draining. These events, whether at work or in the community, these are high challenge events socially. You walk into a room and you don't know what's going on. There's 90 people, and they all look different than you. There's, of course, some people that look like you, and then you're not allowed to talk about work. You just took the thing away that is the easiest, the crutch, the safest thing to talk about. And all I can say is through some of these intentionalities, as leaders, it is our job to create safety for the people that are around us, the people that we lead, our communities. And so whatever that is, that helps people feel safe, we do that. And it turns out it actually works really well.
Fantastic. How do you bring that table together? 93 people, how does that even happen? Like, what's that process look like? Do you go out to the community? Do they come to you? Is there a nonprofit? Yep. Like, where can people go to start finding out about these things? And then how do you build the events?
For sure. We're really just slowly building our what I like to say, extended family.
Yep.
Our co-hosts that we invite to fill the table with guests really come from every walk of life across our city. And now we're expanding into other states like California, New York. And so through those folks who have experienced the table, kind of the way we do it, and have tasted it, see that it's amazing and an incredible experience, then those people become our co-hosts. And so they invite people from their world. So it's a slow process. We have our big table coming up July 26th, and we're accepting people from across the city who say, yeah, I want to invite a few people to this table. So that's
great.
That invitation. So Tom, real quick, that invitation is one of our central paradigms. It is rare that someone says, Tom, I want you to be my guest at this event, at this dinner.
Yeah.
Like, just to ask someone intentionally and presently in person to say, hey, I would love for you to be at this table.
Yeah.
I mean, that's enough to change someone's week.
100%.
To help them feel seen. Like, we have set a place for you. We've got your name at that place. And if you don't come, there's going to be a hole there. So that intentionality of invitation, we really want to practice that and implement that in any gathering that we do, whether it's a lunch with a few people or, the mile-long table.
I think the intentionality is, I don't want to say everything, but I tend to agree. I talk about, in management situations at work, and people go, do I have to have my one-on-one this week? I saw you 8 different times.
Yeah.
And when I'm a manager, I go, yes, because when we run into each other, it's incidental. We're just in the same place at the same time. But it's a totally different dynamic when there's intention about sitting down with somebody, talking to them, and devoting that time to somebody.
Yes.
It's totally different,
Yes.
even if you've seen them 10 other times.
Yep.
Like, say with, mentioned Erica earlier. Like, I see her, we live in the same place. I see her 10 times a day. But when we set dinner and go to dinner and sit at a table across from each other, that's always our best conversations because there's intention behind going and taking the steps to do that with each other.
That's right. And because our time is so limited, as we were talking about a few moments ago, in this hustle society, that time is worth money. That time is so valuable, and we all know how valuable our time is. So when, as a leader or a manager, and inviting someone into 30 minutes of time, 45 minutes of time, and maybe even every other week or once a month, what that communicates, it's a low bar in our world. But to be intentional about that and say, I want to spend time with you without strings attached is one of the most loving, connected things that we can do.
The word belonging comes into my
Yep.
head here. And a lot of times the conversation's DEIB,
Yep.
diversity, equity, inclusion,
Yep.
and belonging. And, that belonging piece, I think, is like, it's the glue of all those other things. It's the outcome of those. Is that the main goal, is to create the belonging for the different people around a table? Because
Yes.
there's intention. Is that the goal, is to get to belonging?
It is. It is. And yes, we like to, or we are tempted to implement programs and implement approaches and hope that there are certain outcomes or products or results of
Right.
of things, programs. Like we hear DEI. We get, we're going to do DEI, and we're going to hope that that creates real diversity, equity, and inclusion. And sometimes it can.
Right.
And not even questioning the motives of anyone involved in that work. I would say most of the motives are pure and whole. The problem is, just because we talk about diversity and equity and inclusion doesn't mean you necessarily get belonging. But I think if you flip it around, like you're saying, we start with pursuing belonging, you almost always get diversity, equity, inclusion, because those are byproducts of people who feel like they belong. Because belonging, at the core of belonging, it's all about accepting, inviting, receiving, integrating, welcoming, and living with. That may sound weird, but the whole person.
Yes.
This whole person, their story, their background, their skill sets, their dreams, their traumas,
Yeah.
their mental challenges, their emotional challenges, the circumstances of their life. When we do that in an intentional way, you celebrate the full diversity of that person. It is fully equitable, is fully inclusive. So that is much slower work, as we're talking about, of creating a place of belonging. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time. I can't remember the number, but if it's I think 17 touch points. I'm just making that number up. It's a high number, right? Of like how many times I need to invite, I need to spend time, a certain amount of time with someone, where trust is built to the point where I really feel a sense that I am cared for. I have a role here. I have a place, whether that's a company or a community. It's the same thing. Those take time. So this is a huge takeaway. There are no shortcuts to DEI. There are no shortcuts to belonging. We have to get over our pragmatism when it comes to relationship.
Yeah, Britt Griffin, it's one of my earlier podcasts on my last show, but he was a DEI. He had the most thought out, focused plan for implementing it in companies and organizations. And we're talking 7 years.
Yeah.
Like 7-year plans.
That's right.
Like that's the scope, because it's a cultural shift.
Yeah.
It has to leak into all these other things. It can't be something that you're top of mind constantly thinking about. It has to be something that's just how you act, how the company acts, how things are sent out, how people talk, how everything goes. And I love that.
Yeah. Can I put it this way? If we are concerned about optics,
which we are,
public optics, we're already coming from the wrong direction. This is heart shift. If we want culture shift, we need a heart shift, and a heart shift for people. So we're talking about HR. This is the base human activity. If you are in business, you are in the humanity business, because it's humans doing the business.
Yeah.
So again, I believe I need my heart to shift, and I'm just as fast paced as everyone else. I want to see results. I'm results oriented. I'm pragmatic. I want to get stuff done.
Yeah.
But guess what? It doesn't work. My heart needs to change toward people, toward holding space for people, for caring for people. Instead of jumping to the to-do list, I need to ask, how's Tom today? I'm actually going to just check in with him first before we get to the to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that belonging piece being first, I love it, because I feel like that's something I always talk about, that every business's goal is to make money for the business.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's that shift from shareholder to stakeholder model that happened. It went the opposite direction. We're still under it, to where companies care so much about making that profit that they look past the heart, the people
Right.
that are doing it. And it's,
Right.
well, I've had bosses tell me, hey, we owe this to the owners. We owe this to the shareholders.
Sure.
But when you slow down and start looking at belonging, you owe this to the people that are doing that
Yeah.
for your shareholders,
Yep.
for your stockholders. And you have to slow down enough and look at those human beings and those people and support and take care of them and bring them in, give them a seat at the table. And then you're going to see even better profits. There's all kinds of studies.
Absolutely.
Anybody that does surveys out there is going to have a study that's showing you that makes better profits, is stopping and creating that kind of culture and leading with your heart, as you're talking about.
That's right. Henry Ford, one of my favorite quotes, a great man in many respects, but a quote from him was, why is it every time I ask for a pair of hands, I get a brain attached? So we're going for the opposite of that, Mr. Ford. And look, if you don't care for your employees, especially this younger generation coming in, you're not going to have any productivity to report to your stakeholders because you're not going to have employees. They're going to move on. The median stay in a job right now is 4.1 years. When an employee leaves, we don't have to spell this out for leaders. What is lost, not only all of the investment that was put into that employee initially, but the relational capital.
Yes.
Relational capital. Just let's stop and think about what the relationships do, what the trust does in our companies, of how productive we are because of trust, of people that have been there for some time and have established those relationships. So absolutely, Tom, we're talking about not only supporting the bottom line, but I would say redefining the bottom line.
Yeah.
What is going to be the ultimate value, not only for managers, not only for leaders and business owners, but what are we doing all this for? Is my question when I talk to leaders.
I'm doing it so that I can go and take my family out to a nice dinner and sit down and talk and have these different conversations.
For sure.
I think the goal needs to be to make as much money as you can without leaving scorched earth behind you. Like, how many people can you bring along in that pursuit? It's, making the most money is still out there, but it's doing it the right way.
That's right.
And you just have to slow down and take a seat at the table to figure that out.
Totally. Money is a byproduct
Yep.
of doing business right.
Yes, 100%. All right, here we are with the HR hot sauce. Tim, are you ready?
Oh my gosh, I am ever so ready with my El Pastor tacos in front of us. Mexican music in the background. I love this, Tom.
There's actually some good tie-ins here. So what most engages you?
Tacos, I would say.
Yeah.
Food and people. And especially people being transparent, authentic. I'll be here. Can we do like 9 or 10 hours?
Yeah.
Right now?
Let's do it.
Okay, sweet.
Let's do it. I have capacity. You're engaged. What's your favorite piece of technology you use in your working day?
Oh my gosh, I would have to say my iPhone. Really boring, uninspired, but the things that it does for us. Voice texts are probably number one.
Yeah, I think anyone that doesn't say something to do with an iPhone is probably lying. Or thinking too broad.
That's right.
What's your favorite interview question to ask or be asked?
Ooh, I love asking the question, what makes you come alive? Mm-hmm. And number 2, who are you?
Ooh, I like it.
That's a fun one.
It's a harder question than you think.
It is difficult, but yes.
What's your favorite workday lunch?
Workday lunch, this is absolutely horrifying, but it would be almond butter and jelly on brown rice crackers.
That sounds good.
It's actually pretty good.
Actually, the circle disc looking cracker
Yes,
things.
yes,
When
totally.
I lived in California, I ate that all the time. And you're from California, so this
That's right.
actually makes sense.
It's healthy. At least I'm telling myself that.
What's your most unique or useless skill?
Wow. Oh, I can make my nostrils flare.
There we go. Ooh, he just did it.
Yeah.
All right. See, everyone has one. I'll sit here just silently staring at you like I just made a sales
I have
pitch.
panicked.
What makes your day at work?
I absolutely love, if we're not already getting it so far, is I love connecting with people. So a heart-to-heart, not talk about work, no job talk, but to sit down either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day really say, how are you? And hear from my colleagues of what's really going on in their lives. It's nothing better.
I love it. Final question. Appropriate for a Mexican restaurant, mild, medium, hot, or nuclear?
Mild. I hate to say it.
That's it. There's no shame in mild. Let's get back to the show.
Awesome.
So we're getting a little bit short on time.
Sure.
Let's pivot to the boardroom. We've been skirting around it here at the end a little bit.
Right.
Talking about I can see the tables and the community coming together. What's a longer table look like for organizations? How are you helping organizations in business with longer tables?
It is, as I mentioned, Tom, like the table, this thing is even more powerful inside a company. We've worked here in Denver with Saunders Construction, and already a great company, culture company,
Yep.
People-centric company. But like most businesses, they're struggling with a hybrid workforce. They have in the construction business 60 job sites, which end up having little microcultures of their own.
Yep.
So retention is pretty good, but still people moving on in a very competitive industry. And wanting to address that in really valuing their employees, they were looking for a new way or maybe just a more human way
Yep.
to help their employees slow down a little bit and feel seen. And so we've set tables with middle management, people who rarely interact in person with one another, but for an evening gets to sit at one long table. And then when your VP of people walks up and welcomes everyone, and there's a elaborate spread of food and says, hey, there's one rule tonight: no job talk, no talk about work. Instantly,
That's
you have
powerful.
communicated that you are more than your hands. You are more than your job description. You are more than your productivity even. You are a human being, and that's how we first see you. So we talk about human first, employee second. So that it starts with the table. The table wanting to set up companies to practice a rhythm of tables. One table isn't going to do it. But
Yeah.
what does it look like to bring your teams, either the whole team or subsections, cross sections of teams, mid-level managers, whoever it is, to eat together in a regular rhythm, as well as encouraging that with one-on-ones, lunches, coffees, constantly building that into the culture of an organization. And then the last, that's the first part. Then our work moves
Great.
into identity work. Because what the table is doing is it's inviting the whole self. In our fragmented culture, we have fragmented identities, and we're exhausted. And we have to keep up all of these identities. And so in the workplace, if we see people as whole, integrated people, we're going to make space for that. But we want to come in, and we are coming in and helping managers and leaders reconcile their own identity issues. This would take a whole podcast. However, I just want to plant that seed because this is the fundamental work that we all have to do. It's the heart work that I mentioned of figuring out who am I? Who really am I? And dealing with the hangups, dealing with the pain, dealing with the fear. We all have fear.
Yeah.
We need to deal with it. As leaders, we need to
You can't bury
deal with the fear in our lives because that will translate. Dysfunction creates dysfunction. Health promotes health. So as leaders, it is our responsibility to do our work, to do our internal work, our heart work, and to start reconciling those things and realizing that we too are whole people. We don't have to be the perfect leader. We don't have to have it all together. It's okay. You're human too, just as much as anybody else. So to be able to, when you get to show up in that place and give yourself permission to show up in that whole place, that you are a human in progress,
Yeah.
you're giving permission to everyone else around you in your company do the same work. So that's the beginning. That's the work that has to be done.
I'm sitting here listening to you, but also thinking about the places I've worked that I could see a massive benefit just in
Really?
my
Yeah.
recent experience,
Yeah.
you know, where a job not too long ago, everybody got along nice in the team meetings and every culture, we had a great culture.
Right.
But really, on the emails and the day-to-day, we were butting heads with each other, and departments were fighting with other departments, and no one actually really got along. The culture looked like it was great, but if you pulled back the curtains, everyone was still banging into each other. And it's when, once a year, we'd get together, you'd see everyone just not talking about work, and everyone became a person again. And for the next, 6 weeks after that, work was better. It was genuinely better. Communication was genuinely better because they weren't yelling at another department manager, or they weren't telling someone. They were talking to another person whose kids they heard about, or that they knew they had something in common with because they went to the same camp, out in Fort Collins or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You could really genuinely see it. So I love this.
Did you, quick question for you.
Yeah.
What did you see in your leaders there?
It was really interesting. One of the leaders really had to be pulled out and to get into it, where I thought this might be where they shine. They're one of the leaders, and when everyone got together, they just weren't the super gregarious, I'm going to do all this,
right?
And the other leader was just in with everybody, talking with everyone, hanging out with the hourly folks, not just the leadership folks. So I think that really had a big impact on both groups, because the one leader that was just kind of hanging around not doing much, guess who was starting to lead all the meetings after that? That person, because of their development.
Right.
So you could see they both, I don't want to say exposed, but I think it showed them a lot of where they were at and what they needed to be doing, good and bad, with us as a team.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. There are many barriers, real barriers, but barriers that we have to overcome. Again, how we spend our time inside a company. I've had many clients, almost all of our clients have said, when are we going to do culture work?
Yep.
Well, let's think about that question.
Yep.
Let's just think about that. Where's your priority? Because wherever your priority is and wherever your heart, that's where you're going to invest, and that's where you're going to spend your time.
Bad news. We're doing culture work, whether you know it or not.
Whether you know it or not. And there is always time to eat. There is always time to see people. There's always time to ask questions when you're working next to each other. How's your kid doing? I heard there was some struggle with homework or whatever. How's that going?
Yeah.
Just a simple question like that can turn their day around in a second and help them feel seen.
That's it. I love it. I want to get you on to your next appointment.
Thanks.
Because we've had a great table here together, but 2 questions.
Yes.
1, tell everyone where they can find you, what's best to connect with you, where they can find longer tables. And then 2, just touch on that mile-long table that was in your bio.
Oh, my gosh.
I know that's a lot, so go.
I'm getting nervous already. Would love to connect with anyone at longertables.org. It's simply longertables.org. That's the best place to connect with us. And whether it's the nonprofit community stuff or it's the corporate consulting and offerings that we have such a passion to help companies create a culture of belonging and connection. In terms of the nonprofit side of this and this crazy idea, I mean, you just got to do this, Tom. Denver's the Mile High City. Somebody's going to do it. As a storyteller, I can just see this thing. In terms of identity, I'll just say this. I wonder about Denver. I wonder about cities in their identities.
Yeah.
Like, who are we? Because we're a collective group of people.
And it's different now than it was
And
5,
it changes,
10 years ago,
right?
I bet, too.
It is, and it changes. But, I think no matter who you are or what your story is, we can all get behind that we are the Mile High City, that we live up here, that we do things with excellence, that we're not going to just accept the way things are. So we're gonna set that mile-long table. That's 5,280 people at one table. And I want us to model leadership for the rest of the country and the rest of the world, because
that's awesome.
That is going to be a story worth telling and connecting over.
I look forward to having a seat at that table myself.
I'll set it up.
Tim, you're the man. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. And
Thanks, Tom.
It's been great being on site, not just staring at a screen for this thing.
Absolutely. Bon appetit.
I have to give a shout out to Disrupt HR. Big shout out to Disrupt HR Denver. Don Weinstein, the crew there are fantastic. That's where I met Tim. He was speaking.
Yep.
We talked for, 14 seconds in between on one of the breaks, and that's all it took for me to go, I got to follow this guy and find him and have him sit down with me. So huge. If you have Disrupt events in your city, I know we've had guests and friends at Cincinnati, Columbus, Chicago. There's Disrupt all over the place. Really, really awesome events. You're going to meet some great people, and I encourage everybody to check them out. Disrupt HR Denver, thank you very much for helping get this podcast together. All right, everybody, you know where to find us. Thank you for your time. Thanks for listening. I hope you were engaged, and we look forward to seeing you back next time at Tom's Engaging HR. Break signals. Take us away.